All right, today we're going to dive deep into one of the most incredible feats of modern engineering. We're going inside the creation of a true giant of the skies and the absolute monster engines that give it life. So let's just start with a number, 560,000 kilograms. It's a huge number, right? That's the maximum takeoff weight for an Airbus A380. But what does that even mean? I mean, how do you even wrap your head around a number that big? Well, think of it this way. You're basically lifting an entire small town off the ground. Yeah, I'm serious. The people, their houses, their cars, the whole shebang, just taking off and cruising just under the speed of sound. That's not just big engineering. That's on a whole other level. Okay, so let's get into the plane itself. We're talking about the Airbus A380. This thing didn't just break records. No, it shattered them. It totally changed the game for what we thought a commercial plane could be. And just look at these stats. They really paint a picture, don't they? I mean, a wingspan as wide as an American football field. It's longer than two blue whales lined up. But get this one, over 6 million individual parts, and they come from more than 30 different countries. Can you just imagine the logistics? It's like a perfectly choreographed global ballet, all to build just one of these incredible planes. It's just a mind-blowing example of teamwork on a global scale. Okay, but a beast of a plane like this, it needs a beast of an engine, right? Or, in this case, four of them. So let's talk about the heart of the A380, the incredible Rolls-Royce Trent 900 engine. Just to give you a sense of scale, try to picture this. Each one of those four engines, hanging under the wings, is about the size of a double-decker bus. A bus. And the power? Oh, the power is just nuts. The thrust from a single engine could pull eight fully loaded freight trains. That's the kind of raw brute force we're talking about here. And the performance stats, they're just off the charts. We're talking 80,000 pounds of thrust from each engine. And that massive fan you see at the front, it's almost 3 meters wide. And when it's at full power, it's sucking in more than a ton of air every single second. That's not just an engine, folks. That's a hurricane in a can. So, speaking of that giant fan, here's a little question for you. Think about it. How many fan blades do you think are in there? How many does it take to move all that air? Keep that number in your head. We're going to circle back to it later. So, the big question is, how on earth do you build something so insanely powerful, but at the same time so incredibly precise? Well, it's a journey that takes a simple block of metal and turns it into a work of art. Okay, so it all kicks off in the virtual world. They build what's called a digital twin, basically a perfect computer model before anyone even touches a piece of metal. Then, the real fun begins. Giant blocks of titanium get slammed into shape by this monstrous 50,000-ton press. After that, the fan blades get hollowed out, which is super important. It cuts their weight by 30%. And then the discs that hold all those blades, they get fused together using this amazing technique called friction welding. And that whole process creates something called a blisk. It's just a mashup of bladed disc. But here's why it's a total game changer. What used to be hundreds of different parts all bolted together is now just one solid piece. It's stronger, it's seamless, and way more efficient. And if you think that's cool, it gets even more wild. Deeper inside the engine, in the really hot part, the turbine blades, they aren't even forged. And this sounds like science fiction, they're literally grown in a furnace. Atom by atom, they form a single, perfect crystal of a nickel superalloy. That's what gives them the insane strength they need to survive what's coming next. And when I say they have to survive insane conditions, I am not kidding. Let's talk about the kind of hell these parts have to operate in and day out. So, inside the engine's core, we're talking about temperatures hitting almost 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And to put that in perspective for you, that is hotter than molten lava. I mean, think about that. The metal parts in this engine are spinning around in temperatures that would just, vaporize most other things on the planet. Now, to control that kind of inferno, you need precision that is almost impossible to imagine. The spinning discs have to be aligned to within 3 micrometers. So how small is that? Well, it's about the width of a single red blood cell. That's the microscopic level of perfection we're dealing with here. Anything less, and this whole thing would just rip itself to shreds. So how is this even possible? How do you make metal survive that? Well, it's with a whole bag of high-tech tricks. You've got these tiny holes drilled by lasers that create a little film of cool air over the blades.
Then they add special ceramic coatings for another 200 degrees of protection. They use something called shot peening, basically blasting the metal with thousands of tiny steel balls to make it stronger. And to top it all off, every single part gets scanned with blue light, creating a perfect 3D model to make sure there are absolutely zero flaws.
Okay, so you've built this masterpiece of an engine, but that's only half the job. Now it has to prove it can take a beating. It has to go through one of the most brutal testing programs you can imagine.
And when I say brutal, I mean it. First, they do a dry crank. They just spin it up with motors, no fuel, and they listen for any tiny vibration that's out of place. Then, they slam the throttle. We're talking from idle to full roaring power in under 30 seconds. And after that, it has to run near its maximum power for 4 hours straight. 4 hours without a single hiccup. And believe it or not, that's just the easy part. Then they start simulating the worst day of flying ever. They throw frozen rain at it. They feed it beach sand. They even shoot what are basically gelatin birds right into the fan to simulate a bird strike. And through all of that abuse, it has to keep running safely. Only if it survives that whole nightmare does it get the stamp of approval.
All right, so remember that question I asked you earlier about the fan blades? Well, you got your number? The answer is 24.
And that number wasn't just picked out of a hat. Those 24 wide blades are an engineering marvel all on their own. They're designed to do two things perfectly. First, move that insane amount of air we talked about, and second, do it quietly. Quietly enough to pass the world's toughest noise rolls. It's the ultimate balancing act between raw power and, well, peace and quiet.
So when you look at it all, this engine, it's so much more than just a bunch of metal parts bolted together. I love how the source material puts it. It's a living hurricane of physics, chemistry, and human ingenuity. And you know what? That's exactly what it is. It's just an amazing example of what humans can create when we decide to push the very limits of what's possible.